And welcome to the Big Peach Ride and Run podcast. I am your host, Dave Dolomite Martinez. You can call me D2. And yes, it is finally spring. We have had the time change. We have sprung the clocks forward a couple weeks ago, and now we are officially into spring. It's starting to feel a little bit warmer. The morning's still kind of cool, but no more freezing temps. The afternoons are feeling very nice in those 60 to 70 degrees, and it's just when it's not raining and we have that low humidity, it is the perfect time of the year. So let's hope that summer doesn't creep into spring, because typically it's been my experience over the last few years that we get maybe 1 or 2 good weeks of spring before we get into that high humidity and the heat. So take advantage of it while you can. So if you're running, you're riding, this is a great time to participate in those activities. Also, the Peachtree, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution Peachtree Road Race, that is now open. So the lottery is open. If you're a non-member, you can register for the race and be put into the lottery. You have until March 31st. If you're an Atlanta Track Club member, you can obviously, because of membership, you get automatic entry. Just register and pay for that registration, and you are automatically in. The Peachtree is back as usual, on July 4th. It's a one-day event, so really looking forward to that, to being part of that running community. 60,000 participants, and finishing down in Peachtree Street. They've partnered up with Monday Night Brewing. The Peachtree, falls on a Monday, so that sort of kind of makes sense to have that partnership. So for those Atlanta Track Club members, you can finish at Piedmont Park and enjoy a nice frosty Monday night beverage. So that's fantastic. So today I've got a awesome guest. The work that they're doing, it's Bearings Bike Works. I'll make sure I get the name right because they're doing a very important work. Um, so this is an organization, a nonprofit that I learned about, probably in the last 2 years as we kind of got more involved in bikes. And they are just doing phenomenal work. And it started, back in like 2008, 2009, in their in their home over in Adair Park, and just befriending and just getting to know their neighbors, the kids, and providing basically letting the kids earn bikes. And through doing work around their neighborhood. Started out first cleaning things up in their neighborhood, picking up trash, and then becoming a little bit more of a formal type of program when the demand sort of increased, and the donations also increased as well, where through friends and connections, people are dropping off bikes for kids, and the kids were then in that neighborhood also saying, hey, you know I heard you guys give away bikes. How can I get a bike? And so that was sort of kind of the genesis of that. And now they're have a brand new facility that opened up in 2020, and they continue to do phenomenal work. And just to go through their website and read the stories, and the way they're really truly transforming lives through through bikes. And it's just something that I became a huge fan talking to Becky O'Mara, and her husband Tim started this. They're still involved, very much deeply involved in this, and working with the community and trying to help the youth in that community through skills, really vocational type skills, but also what Becky refers to as soft skills, things that just they can use down the road later in life. Communication skills, building responsibility, ownership, pride, confidence, things like that, that I think are just important to everyone, regardless of whether you're a kid or an adult. I think anything that allows us to kind of gain pride and confidence is always a great thing. So we have that conversation coming up, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this break. All right, and welcome back. And today I am joined by Becky O'Mara of Bearings Bike Works, and we're going to learn more about this organization, this great organization, the great work they're doing. So welcome, Becky.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be with you today.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you. So I've read about your story. You've got a great website. There's a lot of detail in there, but I want to hear firsthand from you, kind of your story. I mean, this is something that you and your husband started back in 2008, and when you moved into a dare park, and so just straight from you, kind of tell us what was it like moving into a dare park, and sort of kind of leading into the genesis of Bearings Bike Works.
Yeah. So looking back, you might call us urban pioneers. My husband and I were moving in town from Gwinnett um, just after getting married and bought a cheap house and started renovating, the perfect newlywed project. So we moved into a dare park, and our house is right across the street from the neighborhood park. So we kind of had front row seats to neighborhood life in a lot of ways. And just realized that it was a tough place to grow up, honestly. There was a lot of crime and drug activity in the park, and even like physical fights would happen there. And so kids would try to use the playground, but honestly, it just wasn't um, that safe to do so. So over the course of first few months living there, we would walk our dog and talk to the kids in the neighborhood, and got to know a little girl named Brittany. And she was 8 years old at the time. And one day she came by our house without her bike. And this was unusual. She was one of the few kids in the neighborhood that had a bike and would ride it up and down the sidewalks and the streets and in the park. And we asked her, "What happened to your bike?" And she said the tires had gone flat, and they didn't really have the means to fix it, just or didn't know how to. So we offered Brittany some help to help her fix her bike. I said, "Hey, we can help you with that. You might have to, earn the money to get the tubes and tires." It was going to be a little project. So we came up with chores for her to do around our yard. She just things to have a little skin in the game. But she swept the porch and raked leaves, and after a couple weeks, we decided it was enough. She was done. We were done. And we went to the store and realized that getting a new bike was only about $15 more. So we surprised her with a new bike and said, "Congratulations, you earned it. Great job." And of course, she was over the moon excited, rode off, and 20 minutes later came back with two friends. And she said, "They want bikes too." And we don't really do that. But over the course of a few weeks, I don't even remember, but we had this thought: I bet people have bikes in their garages that their kids had outgrown. Maybe they'd give them to us. And I was working at a big church out in Gwinnett at the time. So I just started talking to friends, just people, young families, and people had kids. And sure enough, people had bikes, and they were more than happy to get rid of them. So we started taking these bikes, and Tim would fix them up, make sure they were safe and rideable, and we'd invite kids to earn a bike by picking up trash in the neighborhood. Litter was a big issue at the time. So the trade became, "Hey, if you help pick up 5 bags of trash, you'll earn a bike." And so word spread, and it went from there. We realized that bikes were this amazing, and still are this amazing tool for building community and just getting to know our neighbors. And I got kids active. They were just riding these bikes all the time, and we got to know their families. And we slowly as we got to spend time with them, just build influence, build relationships, and be able to speak into other areas of life beyond the bike. So that's how it started, right there in our driveway in 2009.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, I'm familiar with the area. I've actually have run through a dare park through this little, sort of kind of a race kind of series that was kind of going on. That was had these very kind of almost secret locations that would pop up on a weekly basis. I'm not sure if
Yeah,
you familiar with the Atlanta, I think Grand Prix series or something like that, or it was done by another local company here. And
yeah,
during the pandemic they did this kind of virtual type run, so they would pick all these little pockets of
cool.
neighborhood, and Adair Park was one of the ones that we kind of ran through, and depending on the course. But back, I guess, truly, the neighborhood has obviously changed over the last you know I
Yeah,
guess
10 years, 12
12,
years.
14 years
Yeah.
since you've been there. So, moving in, and I think it's improved quite a lot. It's transitioned into, where there's a lot more development. You're right near the Lee and White, establishment. It's got Monday Night Garage, World Heaven. So now it's becoming this
Yeah.
community area of gathering of socialization. But that's not what it was like back then. So you truly were kind of pioneers moving into an area that was, had a lot of crime, like you said, the kids fighting in the park,
Yeah.
crime. And for you to kind of, and your husband to step out in the community, get to know the kids and your neighbors, is really something kind of special. I don't know that many, many times we even know who our neighbors are. We tend to kind of keep to ourselves. So doing that, I think is it was awesome. But I was one of my lead up questions was, kind of what prompted you and what was some of those things. But then I started looking more at your bio on your website, and then saw, and as you mentioned, you'd done some work in the church, and sort of I think that sort of kind of makes sense now of the kind of giving back to the community, working with youth and stuff, and that's sort of kind of the background for both you and your husband.
Yeah. In a lot of some ways we just saw, and I don't know if it was purposeful or not, but it felt like, you know, there was a certain kids that were just like written off, or my husband always says, if you tell someone they're not going to amount to anything, there's a good chance they're not going to amount to anything.
Mhm.
And when there's so many challenges, it feels overwhelming. But inside each of the kids that we serve, we just know that there's gold in there. And sometimes you just gotta, dust it off and help them see it themselves so that they can take hold of it and pursue their gifts and skills, passions, and now in our work, develop skills that are valuable out in the community, in the marketplace. And so for us, it was just intrinsic. We just needed to do something. We knew that the challenges could be overcome, and that communities are strengthened when you know each other. When you know one another's name, everything changes. So, it's even in 2008, Adair Park was a very diverse neighborhood. It was still very empty. A lot of the houses that are so beautiful now were boarded up, and after the housing crisis of
Yeah.
2007. But but anyway, but when you get to know one another, and things are different when you know one another's name. And so when people were moving into the neighborhood, there was when that just helped a lot. And it was just became something really special in the neighborhood between kids and adults of all ages and races.
Well, I think that's a lesson there that we can all kind of learn that, that, giving it, just reaching out, that helping hand, getting, connected with your neighbors. And it could be start off as a very small change, just impacting one individual. In this case, it was Brittany, a girl who just had, flat tires, and you reached out, and just by getting to know those kids, and the reputation kind of spread, and so you became a member of that community, someone that was willing to help and support, and started very small, and and it's grown, to make a huge impact. And I mean, I'm guessing back then you had no idea what the impact you would have, starting off with, Brittany as, the first, you know kid that you would help out simply because she had flat tires.
Yes, no idea. Yeah. Well, and kind of the story as it kind of continues along, we got overrun with bikes at our house.
Yeah.
We're like in town living, so we didn't even have a garage. There were just bikes everywhere. And finally, I was like, Tim, you got to get these bikes out of here. And so he started looking for something to rent, just something. And we found this basement of a automotive shop on the corner of the neighborhood that would eventually be like right on the Atlanta Beltline, which was really
Mhm.
neat. But this was way pre even East Side Trail. So
Yeah.
started Larry, the owner of that property, gave us so we could rent his basement, and it was an automotive graveyard, but we cleaned it up, and that outfitted it slowly over months and even like a couple years into what became just a little community hub. And when we ran out of trash, we had to figure out a new way for kids to earn bikes. So Tim designed this great program and now system where kids learn how to build and fix bikes. And as they do so, they earn points. And then they can buy a bike with those points from an ever changing revolving stock that are refurbished by our team. And now teens and young adults in our job training program. So it's moved beyond just Tim and I, and we've got now a team of 7 full-time staff members, and we've got a couple uh, teens, 4 teens working with us as job trainees to serve about 300 kids a year in now a handful of programs.
Wow, that's fantastic. So, as far as getting started, I mean, I ride a bike and I sort of kind of, work on bikes, but I'm limited in what I know, and simple things like a flat tire, maybe replacing a cable, or maybe adjusting a rear derailleur or something like that. But anything beyond that, I think I'd have to learn a little bit more. How did Tim kind of become that expert? Did he go to take some classes, learn online, buy a book? Because obviously this wasn't something that I think he was originally
Yeah.
trained for, right? And then to take that and then end up sort of coming up with a curriculum to teach others how to do. What was the process of that?
Yeah. It was a lot of trial and error, learning on bikes and breaking bikes and starting over. And then eventually, as we could, he like our first hire was a mechanic, someone who had a little bit more experience in the bike mechanic world, and so um, we now have like a full time seasoned mechanic from the bike world that helps and knows much more beyond us. But so it started as just trial and error, and when you're working on kids bikes for the most part and used bikes, and that's also you can it's okay if they're either fairly simple or it's okay if you mess up and we can swap one out or swap out a part. So,
Right.
but now we've got our team that progresses through really some curriculum based off of Park Tool. They've got obviously some of the best in the industry resources on just YouTube. I mean, it's amazing what you can learn
That's right.
on
Yeah.
there. And so we follow a lot of their bike school curriculum and utilize their resources as just like a systematic way to teach teens, especially now teens that are moving more into advanced skills, just what they would need to know to step into, hopefully, step into a bike shop anywhere in the city and be able to hold their own, and also
Yep.
continue learning as new things come through in the industry, which is always ever changing.
Yeah, for those of you that are listening and don't know, Park Tools, it's a sort of kind of in the bike industry, they're like well known and they're very distinctive because it's always that blue, rubber handle on all their tools. So as far
Yep.
as branding and
Yep.
marketing, it's very distinguishable. And you're right, they do offer courses and certification, and I know a lot of the bike shops have their mechanics trained through there. So, and I did forget that they do have that YouTube channel. So anything you would like to learn, you can. I've picked up, a book here on bike repair and stuff to kind of teach myself over, the last decade or so, and have built up a bike, a couple bikes, on my own just by, kind of tinkering and playing around and finding parts here and there. So there is a little bit of joy in doing that and the tinkering and just, and then of course the end result is finishing a project like that and sort of kind of um the pride that you take in completing something like that. So I can understand
Yeah. Yeah.
where this would be something where, to bring, a kid in and say, hey, you're going to build your own bike. You're going to work in the shop. You're going to build your own bike. And at the end, it's yours. There's a certain sense of
Yeah.
pride there. I think
Yeah.
that, and confidence, right? I mean, I think that's something
Oh,
that
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, we find it's interesting. Like, kids just don't have an opportunity much these days to even work with hand tools. Like, it's not something you're doing in school really anymore. And so we find um, kids who may struggle in the traditional classroom or have behavior issues can come into the bike shop, and because it's such kinesthetic learning, you're just using your whole body and interacting with something real. they can thrive and really enjoy it. Like I think we were in the early days just surprised at how much kids enjoyed working with tools and working on bikes. But it was neat to see, and you're absolutely right. When you learn a new skill, I mean, at any age, but especially in childhood and adolescence, it just does so much for your self confidence. And suddenly those wheels start turning of like, hey, if I can do this, then what else can I do? And those things really start to translate um, into other areas of life. So that's so neat to see. It's something we're super passionate about.
Yeah, I mean, I have seen, just, as I grew up, I mean, I remember working on cars with my dad, whether it's simple as swapping out the battery or spark plugs, things like that that you just would do maintenance type stuff. So you kind of learn a little bit of that, and you learn those skills, and you're like, okay, well, I can do something. I can fix something. If I'm stranded on the road, I get a flat tire. I know how to change a flat tire,
Yeah,
and even simple things like just doing home repair and things like that. That I feel that it's I think the times have changed a little bit. I think, we're so computer based that skills like that, just, working with tools, that sort of has kind of gone away. There's plenty of people you can hire, of course. And I think there's also, conversation about a lack of skilled, people to do those type of jobs. And they're
yeah,
necessary, in our world, right? I mean, if something breaks down, whether it's plumbing or the AC or something, you need people that are able to do that. There's vocational type of schools and training that, can be applied. And I think
yeah,
there's, for
absolutely.
me, I just bought a home, about 6 months ago, and there's some work to be done. It wasn't a brand new home. There was some remodeling, but there's some things that need to be done. And so I'm going to YouTube and I'm learning, how to do some electrical stuff, some plumbing stuff, some carpentry. And
Yeah,
there
yeah,
is a sense of pride, and ownership of it. And even, and this, there's that sort of kind of like that, stereotype of men and tools and going to Home Depot or Lowe's and just spending time. And I get it, because that, to me, that's kind of cool. It's these are the adult toys,
yeah,
the way I see it. And to a certain extent, I'd say bikes are the same way. I mean, I was collecting bike tools and doing things, and love working on a bike. I remember as a kid, doing the same thing where, I had, I think my first bike had like, the high handlebars, the banana seat, and, I didn't like the way it looked, so then I'm like, "Okay, well, let me save up some money, let me change it. I wanna change the handlebars, I wanna change the seat because I don't like the banana seat, that's not cool looking. I wanted to look more like a BMX bike, so I'm
yeah,
tinkering and
yeah,
changing things, and, that's kinda cool, to do, and, to see,
yeah.
other kids and that skill kind of being applied, I think is great, because you're taking that energy and you're focusing it on something positive,
Yeah,
right?
and they're learning without realizing they're learning. Like all of those life experiences, all of those, we call them soft skills around here, just come naturally. But the bike is so relevant in childhood, adolescence, and the majority of the kids, we serve kids from 6 to 17, but our sweet spot is really in that 9 to 13-year-old range where you're just starting to experience independence. You can get out on your own. You can sometimes ride around the neighborhood on your own, and so a bike is the tool that's so relevant to their life. And so when you're learning how to maintain it, you've got the good peer pressure of like needing to keep your bike in working order because you want to be able to
Yep.
ride with your friends, and it just becomes this great mechanism for teaching those deeper things naturally in an unforced way, and just celebrating riding. And we just love, it's becoming almost like rare to see kids in some, subdivisions around the world of like not seeing kids ride their bikes that much anymore. And so we also just love that we can, as Atlanta becomes more bikeable and some of these older neighborhoods, especially on the west side, um, are are really bikeable, being able to support that, and just celebrate all things bikes, in the shop as well is really cool.
Yeah, so, one of the things that, as you were kind of starting this out and, said started out in your house and then into a, a garage. I mean, is this something that you had seen, was there anyone else doing anything like this? Were you guys the first ones to do this? Was there something like, did you reach out to if there was anyone else that said, "Hey, how are you guys doing this?" Or did you just kind of like write the book?
Yeah, gosh, in some ways, we did. We kind of wrote it inadvertently. We had seen like other um, programs that used tools to like build community and teach skills, and so and it kind of naturally built into like the earning aspect of the program was just a sense of like affirming dignity in other people. We didn't want it to be like a one-way charity type of program for us, especially as neighbors, living in the community. That exchange element was super important. It just set us on even playing ground with the kids we were serving and the families. And so that was, we followed a lot of those models in the early days. We looked to folks that were doing things in unique ways, that were just dignifying and affirming of people. But the bike piece was unique, and maybe just we grew slowly. We just it was like an actual felt need in the community. It wasn't something we were like imposing, like, no, you need bikes. You don't know it yet, but you need them. It was naturally happening. So because that there was like a natural response of like, yes, we do want bikes and need bikes and we need to maintain them. A lot of people don't realize like giving kids to or giving bikes to low income communities or kids that don't have bikes, a big or unseen consequence of it is what happens when the bike breaks down. So there's a lot of bike giveaway programs, but the minute that bike gets a flat tire, if that family doesn't live near a bike shop, or can't afford, to take a bike to a bike shop and get a tune up, some of those bikes just end up in the backyard and aren't ridden again. So for us, because we were so close to the families we were serving, saw that and said, "Oh gosh, this is a big piece. If we want kids to ride, you've got to being able to maintain them, and if they know how to maintain it themselves, then it becomes even easier because they're empowered to take care of those things themselves when those breakdowns happen."
Well, I mean, I think it's, as you said, it wasn't something you had imposed or try to force bikes. And I think it's bikes sort of kind of come naturally to kids. I think every kid at some point has asked for a brand new bike under the Christmas tree, right? There's a sense of independence, the sense of kind of going out from beyond, your sidewalk and riding down the street. I think it's something that is sort of kind of natural and it's instinctive of kids that they want to do that, whether it's through cultural messages or just advertising things that we've seen that we're kind of drawn to. I know I was drawn to it.
Yeah,
It would,
yeah,
cycling for me has always been one of those things that um I was always drawn to it. I couldn't really explain why, but I do think it's a little bit of that sort of kind of independence of being able to step away from the house, and just ride down the street and you're like, okay, I'm alone. I'm far enough away where maybe I'm a little scared because I'm not sure of my environment because I'm always around mom or dad. And so you start testing those boundaries. You start testing like how far can I go out? How far can I go and
yeah.
test, my comfort level. And I think as kids we're just naturally curious. So I think the bike
Hmm.
part of that just comes naturally to kids. And so it makes sense that this took off, in your neighborhood regardless
Yeah,
of whatever the economic, situation may be or neighborhood. I think that's just kind of natural. Um, and then the part as far as, the fixing the bikes and then, you get a flat and it gets a disrepair. I think that's also common. Um, in any really neighborhood, because there's so many bikes where people will buy a bike and they have the well intention of riding a bike, but then it sits in the garage. It gets too hot, or you get a flat, or something happens. It's not working as well. It's not riding as smoothly as you want. You get distracted, and then it sits in a corner in the garage and collects dust, never to be brought out again until, like many people, the pandemic became an issue, kind of a
yeah,
catalyst
yeah.
to say, hey, I've got this bike sitting in the garage. I can kind of take it out, And some people
Hmm.
will say, well, I can drive and take it to a local bike shop. But it takes some effort to do that, to say, yes, I am going to continue to ride, be dedicated in this activity because I love it. And I'm going to, take the extra step and make time to take it to a bike shop or learn how to fix it myself. Where I think, like in
Mhm.
your neighborhood, that's a little bit more of a challenge, right? And yeah, I'm guessing, of course, that there was a huge amount of support in the community for the work that you were doing. I would say you guys are probably rock stars in your community, right? Celebrities, local
Yeah.
celebrities, with the work that you've done, right? I mean, I would think so.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, very fortunate and blessed. But yeah, I mean, Mr. Tim especially, he's known on the streets around Southwest Atlanta. And it's neat. It was, and once we were just very grateful to kind of have been accepted into like the fabric of the community, and just the bike shop now is just an expression of the community. Like when you walk in during our open shop hours, when kids are working and earning points and that sort of thing, like our full time mechanic is came up through the program, started when he was 12, and he's now full time on our team. And we've got other teams that are interning, but part of their internship is leading the youth program. So it's so neat to see like kids who grew up in the program are now in some ways like running it. They're serving customers. We're selling refurbished bikes and doing repair work, and it's run by teens in the job training program. So it's really neat to see that it's a reflection, hopefully, of the community, and just a really neat gathering meeting place as well.
Well, obviously the neighborhood has sort of kind of changed. There's been, sort of a lot of renovations, and I think a lot of it has to do with the, Atlanta Beltline and sort of, that type of work just, draws investors and just, people that are willing to, putting money into those neighborhoods, obviously for commercial and business and growth. And so obviously there's that change that has happened. But beyond that part, beyond what is visibly seen, more of the physical changes that have happened. What are some things that you've noticed as far as maybe the environment, since you guys have started, that says, yes, we truly are doing great work and continue to do great work, regardless of what physically is being changed in your neighborhood. What have you noticed?
Yeah. Um, well, at the shop, we've there's always like a question of how like a neighborhood and people respond to growth when it comes, and um, we've always talked, and like our vantage point is, hey, these are opportunities coming your way, and so I think that like success stories are kind of the things that we see in the environment is seeing young people, especially teens and young adults, look at growth as opportunity, rather than threats, or from a fear-based mentality. So, the young adults working with us, we talk about like, hey, the way you capitalize opportunities coming your way is through skills. You've got to develop the skills to take advantage of those opportunities. So when they come, you're ready and you're prepared to do that. And I get excited when we see just our that permeating the world, the people, the kids and teens that come to the bike shop every day, that they love interacting with people or customers and visitors that come. They love talking about what they're learning. They love talking about where they're heading, after bearings. And that's just a unique, I think, in some ways, just a unique thing. Because none of us really know what's going to happen. I mean, Atlanta's growing so fast, and it is changing quickly. But in a lot of ways, it's not helpful to fear the growth, but rather say, hey, how do I fit into this story? How do I take advantage of the opportunities that come our way?
Yeah, I think one of the things that you had mentioned as far as soft skills and the way the kids kind of interact and talk about, talk in the shop and interact with each other, but also with individuals coming into the store, and sharing kind of what they're excited about and talking. I think, this is where I think sports and bikes and these type of physical activities provide, provide some confidence, because, for myself, I'm an introvert. I've always been the shy kid, never, up for public speaking. If I ever had to do any public speaking, I felt like I was going to die. I would be just sweating and that was my greatest fear is getting on a public stage until I had to, and it was a mess.
Yeah.
But I do feel that being physically active, doing, participating in sports, interacting with other people, in those type of activities starts opening up those opportunities and starts providing a little bit more confidence. I certainly would not be here hosting a podcast, and taking the lead. And as I mentioned prior to us starting recording, and many people that listen to this know that Mike is the podcast host. He's got the energy, and so I've got to follow him. And I'm like, I'm nowhere near at his level, but I had to have the confidence to step forward and continue, doing the podcast, doing this, and it's things like cycling, things like that, that just allow me to kind of reset, refocus, provide me the confidence because I see improvement, I see changes. And I think
Yeah.
those are things that, apply to everyone, whether you're, a kid, that's, 9, or a teen, all the way to being an adult. I think, you know, sports and physical activity, whether it's cycling or running or team sports, provide some level of confidence and some level of pride that you're willing to take chances and risks on things that you probably wouldn't do and interact better with other individuals because of the opportunities that are provided through organizations
Yeah.
like yours.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that's awesome. I'm trying to draw on my own experience and sort of kind of connect some of the things and put myself in their shoes as well, because I think it applies to everyone. It's not just,
Yeah.
you know,
Well,
this small community.
yeah, well, and we saw that too, specifically with sport. This last year, we've primarily been like a earn a bike program, give a kid a bike, and just know that they're going to ride it recreationally. But last year, we started a youth mountain biking team that
Yep.
participates and raced in the Georgia Cycling Association series in the fall. And so put kids who like to ride, we knew they were riding all the time, but hadn't ever gotten on a trail, hadn't ever thought about like riding competitively. And we had a team of 7 last fall that practiced for about, the 5 month season and then raced and experienced just that. Had a blast. Just like loved getting out, loved getting on the trails. It was so neat to just see the enthusiasm. And as mountain biking has become more accessible, even in town, we practice over at Southside Park,
Yeah.
which is just about 20 minutes from us. It becomes a viable sport to compete in, and it's just a great step into cycling for youth. It's like contained uh, area. They're not
Yeah.
uh, facing the roads yet, but can develop the skills. And we were just so proud to see the kids compete. And just with that, with that new experience, you just see the confidence build, the willingness to take risks, to try something new. Those are the things that go well beyond the bike. It's neat.
Yeah, I mean, and looking at your website, because I was looking at the various different stories, and that's where I kind of learned that you guys had that mountain bike, racing program, and you had Kobe, started out, and you know, he
Yeah,
he finished what, last, right? And in some instances, he wasn't able to finish just because of the cutoff time, right? I mean, he had a
yeah,
certain amount
yeah,
of time to finish one lap, and he couldn't do it, and yet he still pushed through it. I mean, obviously through
yeah,
the encouragement of you and the rest of the team, and he was able to mid-season, cut that time in half until he finally finished. And I think once again, it's seeing those small little steps in that progression, really transforms people's lives. Whether it's as simple as, I don't want to say as simple, but even as simple as building a bike, right? It's like you take those steps to see something completed and you take pride in that, and you build confidence to go into something that I would say is foreign to someone that lives inside the city, right? To go mountain biking, to go in the woods and trails, to do something completely
yeah,
foreign and to take a risk and not be great at it from the beginning because no one is ever great at something they're doing for the first time. Some people
Right.
may be better than others, but no one's great. It takes time, it takes practice. So for him to continue to work at it, to continue to grow, to continue to develop, I think that's just something that once again, at the end of the season, I think he had to have been really proud, and I think his
Yeah.
confidence level is really high. So I love hearing
Yeah.
stories
It was
about
so,
that,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But also, there's that aspect because I know that it's a question as well in cycling, and it's, we've had that in running is that there's not a lot of diversity, in these type of sports. And a lot of it has to do with the introduction of how they're introduced, in these communities, right? If you're in inner city, you don't have access to mountain bike trails. um, you usually don't have transportation even to get you to a place, even if they're somewhere around. So that makes it
Yeah.
difficult for inner city kids to get into, um, something like mountain biking. And so it's pretty
Yeah.
much, it's not a diverse sport, particularly I say mountain biking. Cycling, I'd say, is the same thing. Just in general road cycling, and a lot of it has to do with the access to bikes. It's in order to get a nice bike and compete in races, you have to have a lot of money. Typically to buy a nice expensive bike. I've gone to kids triathlon races that have you know 12-year-old racing on a $10,000 bike, and the wheels are aerodynamic. I mean, they're fancier than the bikes that I had, when I was doing triathlon.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like 45 years old, and a 12-year-old kid had a bike that cost 3 times as much as my bike. So I think those are things that are barriers, but I do think there's ways around it. I think programs like what you're doing, exposing them and taking them, opens up that door of things that they didn't know was a possibility, and that could
Yeah.
drive
Yeah.
them to do more.
Well, and yeah, it's interesting. Like the cost of getting on like a race worthy bike is steep. So, and especially if you don't even know you like it yet,
Yep.
you're just trying it out. We look to take away those barriers as much as possible, and just know, like, if you can expose someone to something in their youth, it's a season of life, you're trying new things anyway, so
Yep.
they're so open to trying things. Let's take away the barriers and let them try it out and authentically, like, say, yes, I like it. This is cool. I didn't even think about this. Like, didn't know this sport was possible. Um, or not for me,
Yep.
But Elliot Jackson, new friend of ours, he's a former pro mountain bike racer, and we've been talking with him, and it's so insightful. But he said, infrastructure is key, like providing the right infrastructure for someone to step into a sport that has traditionally not been in that sport is needed. But it's not just like the physical infrastructure, like, and in Atlanta, like, mountain biking is becoming more accessible to communities where it just hasn't been, through the good work organizations like MTB Atlanta is
Yep.
doing with um, partners, even City of Atlanta, City of South Fulton, East Point, but also the infrastructure of community. Thinking about community as a type of infrastructure, having people that you ride with, thinking about that. Like, it's hard in any new activity to step into something solo, but when you have you're connected to other people who are doing it as well, that you're more apt to continue with it. And then also just the training, a training infrastructure, a place that can help you step into a new activity successfully. So I love thinking about it that way, of like, we've got to provide the infrastructure for a new community to step into these activities. And it's not just the physical built infrastructure, but let's also think about community and training as pieces of just making sure that the ground is fertile, so that if someone steps in and likes it and wants to go forward, that there's a system to, like, just to keep them going. And so we're finding that we can play a piece of that in mountain biking in the city, and that Georgia Cycling Association is playing a piece of that, and MTB Atlanta is doing a lot of that. And there's some neat synergy that gets kids and teens into a new sport, authentically, like, that they're stepping in, they are loving, is just really cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also a mountain biker, and I remember, arriving here back in 2000 and, trying to, and when you move here to Atlanta, you move to Georgia, you think about, oh, these trails and all that. But to ride anywhere that is at least, significant of distance or something like that, where you feel like, oh, well, this is truly mountain biking. Because I came from Florida and that was not mountain biking. That was off-road riding, a lot of sand. And so I was really looking forward, but you had to drive at least an hour outside of the city,
Right,
unless you
right.
went up to, Soap Creek, just outside the perimeter. That was the
Yeah, yeah,
closest one. So to have the, South, Atlanta, park opened up. I think that just opened up like in the last 2 years, and they're expanding that trail system because when I went out there, I think they only had two sections, like a 4 maybe a 6 mile. And I think they're expanding it and they're developing it,
yeah.
um, and I think things along the belt line where there'll be some things like a pump track, I think is sort of some things that they're talking about, which develops some of those skills that can be used in off road and mountain biking. Um, so I think those are all things I think are great, and do agree with as far as like you said, the infrastructure as far as training and building that because I think you can this is sort of kind of getting into a deeper discussion and but a lot of times when we're talking about more like say the professional and Tour de France and those high end elite cyclists, there's always a question like, well, why doesn't the US have riders of that caliber? Why is it all in Europe? And a lot of it comes down to the infrastructure because in Europe, cycling is important and it's a way of life. That's how they commute. A lot of them commute. The majority of them will commute and own bikes and have several bikes, and they grow up riding bikes. Where here in the States, that's not something we really focus a lot on. It's definitely more sports. That's why there's a big emphasis on baseball and football and basketball, and that's why we're better at that than we are at things like cycling. So,
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
so having something like this, I think, can make a difference, down the road, years from now, as far as developing, some future talent that could, represent the U.S. on a larger, stage, especially if it's something that someone loves. And I also like the idea of what you said that, in order to kind of get into, something like cycling, you don't have to spend a lot of money, especially if you don't know if you're going to like it. And I think just starting out with something basic and just kind of going out there, trying it out, figuring out if it's something you love. And then if you do, then you make the initial investment. Then you start kind of learning more about it and, finding groups and finding, and you learn it's a process. And that's part of the fun of
yeah,
it is that
yeah.
process as well. Right. Um,
Mhm.
so I really love what you guys are doing. So you mentioned, as far as you grew out your space, out of your space in that garage you were renting, and now you have this beautiful larger facility. I've been by it as
Yes.
far as on the west, on the west side, and on the Beltline there. I've never been in it, so I look forward to stopping by and checking it out. But how did that come about? I mean, you're a nonprofit, so there had to be a lot of fundraising and what was that process like? How many years did it take from the idea that said we need to expand and kind of build a much larger facility, basically starting from
Yeah.
scratch, not renting a place, but building a place. What was that like, and kind of what went into all of that?
Yeah. So it goes back to 2016, 2017. The program was growing um, so much. Our little basement shop would be packed out on a Saturday, especially. We'd have a line out the door of kids waiting to get in, 50 kids inside working on bikes, which was just incredible. Um, and simultaneously, we were just seeing, in addition to just like a strengthened community and what that was doing for crime and other things in the neighborhood, we were just seeing this skills development just catapult these kids forward, and just kids who were um, honestly headed towards either high school dropout or prison, or just some bad paths um, were just thriving and stepping into work and doing well in school and considering heading to college. So there was just I mean, blessed, fortunate that just an appetite to help us grow as we started
Hmm.
talking to people. They were like, yes, let's help you go to the next level. So when those automotive shop owners decided to sell in 2017, they offered us first dibs on the property. And at that point, the West Side Trail was under construction. And so we launched a capital campaign and raised about $2.5 million
Wow.
to purchase the property and renovate the garage, an old double Quonset hut. That's just a unique little landmark on the west side, and is now 6,000 square foot program space. And it's unique. There's nothing else like it. It's just a workshop for building bikes. And we've got some great meeting rooms and additional training rooms and offices. And just under an acre of land right on the West Side Trail that is just primed for us to continue to grow. Our retail shop has grown over the last 2 years as well. We get a lot of bikes. People still donate bikes to Bearings. That's like
Hmm.
our main lifeblood of the program and earned income side of things. So a lot of those bikes just don't get earned, quickly enough. So we refurbish them in the job training program and then sell them back to the community. So we're refurbishing and selling a ton of bikes, and then offer reasonably priced repair service to the immediate community here through that shop, which is really neat to see. So we're so thrilled. I mean, the new space opened in October 2020, and it's just a unique gathering place, and just a beacon, in the community for what's possible when you try something new and put your hand to work, and developing skills.
Well, I look forward to stopping by and checking it out because it does look
Yes,
like a
please
beautiful
do.
beautiful space. Now, yeah, you like you said, you've got a retail shop where the kids work at and all that. But I mean, overall, you are a nonprofit, so you're still dependent on donations. So let's talk about some of the things that you guys are doing because you got a cool event coming up. The
Yeah.
Bearings Bike Along, which I'm looking forward to. I plan on not only being there to kind of that morning of helping out and volunteering any way I can. Big Peach Ride and Run will be there as well. So we're partnering this. We're helping to promote it, and I'm also going to participate later in the day to the belt grind, I believe is what it's
Yeah.
called.
Yeah.
So that should be. I'm going to ask you a couple questions there because it's But tell us first about the Bearings Bike Along. What can people expect? What it's all about, and let's let people
Yeah.
know about it so they can come on out and help and support you guys.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, it's coming up on April 16th. It's a family friendly ride and run activity just along the West Side Trail down in Southwest Atlanta. So it'll be a recreational ride, or run or walk. It's designed to be something you could bring your kids to and experience a side of the city that perhaps folks don't get over to very much. And then it, we'll also have some activities afterwards. We'll have food and face painting and fun stuff for kids. And it's a fun day that'll just be all Bearings, benefiting Bearings in some way. We'll have our thing in the morning, and then the belt grind. Their proceeds go to Bearings as well, which is just a neat partnership and such a fun afternoon adventure as well.
So definitely go to bearingsbikeworks.org, and then click under the let's see here.
The
Under
events
the
tab.
get involved, attend an event, and the details are
Yeah.
there and take you a link to sign up and participate and learn more about that. But that should be a great time. It looks like in the fall you have the Bearings Barbecue and Brew. So that's another, looks like you got that coming up on October 2nd.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
and then the other thing that I found, you guys, like you said, you have your retail shop, but you have a used gear sale where you offer, some high end bikes that you guys have worked on, and I guess reserve them for this sort of kind of like garage sale where people can actually, maybe find a really sweet ride, you know, um,
Yeah,
and
we do
take
that, and
advantage of
we
that.
also sell gear. We get a ton of cycling gear donated to Bearings now, and gear and parts and throughout the year. And so, if you're working on a bike, or we find a lot of people, like if they're getting into cycling for the first time, can come and get outfitted, in a kit and shoes and some of the things that, if like you were talking about, like if you're not quite ready to, um, you don't know if you're going to stick with it. If you want to just try it
Right.
out, it's a great way to kind of step into it and, feel confident out on the bike. So yeah, we'll be doing that later this summer this year.
Well, and then the fact that you're right on the belt line there is a great opportunity to test ride something, right? And just, find out whether this is something your fits right, whether it's something you want to do. And so,
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
encourage anyone that's interested to check them out and purchase a bike there, and get a great deal, and find out if that's something you're interested in. And if and for those of you that maybe are no longer cycling, have lost interest, and have a bike sort of kind of sitting in the garage collecting dust, then by all means consider donating it to Bearings. I think that what they're doing is
Absolutely.
is awesome, repurposing those bikes. And I guess the newest term is upcycling, right? To take something old
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
refurbish it and get it fixed up, as instead of it ending up in a dump someplace. Um, so by all means, I think
Good.
that's, help support them. So let me get into the belt grind, because my question there is sort of like, what am I getting into? It's a 20-mile ride, sort of kind of like there's no course. It's sort of kind of like I sort of feel like it's a scavenger hunt, sort of kind of like underground type thing. Someone mentioned to me, it's like, don't wear anything Big Peach related. It's they're like, you don't know what to expect. I was like, and I see people, on their page, wearing costumes as well. What have I gotten into?
Oh, I love it. I'll tell you what, it is the best of Atlanta. It is people from all walks of life that show up to ride the belt grind. So it's got that underground vibe that's still really cool. You'll find out your course when you get there. And there'll be Wyatt calls them breadcrumbs along the path that will let you know you're headed on the right path. But I mean, it's just that I love. I mean, we've got folks from all backgrounds, road cyclists that are like renting mountain bikes for the day to ride it. People who are just recreational riders that probably haven't ridden 22 miles in a while that are still heading out, and then just in town biking crowd that just is looking for a fun day. And then of course, like afterwards, just a huge party over at Lee and White, kind of a moving party through all the breweries. Um, and it should just be, I mean, it should be a great time. Very adventurous, and it's a place where people can step in and feel welcome, whatever your cycling background is.
Well, yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that's sort of kind of what I'm feeling. Like I said, I know that I guess if you want to actually race, if you're really competitive, you can race. I
Yeah,
signed up for more of like, hey, I'm just here for the fun. I don't know what I'm getting into. Let's just have fun, just kind of cruise, because you know, I always find if it's a race and it's sort of kind of like this planned course, or you're not familiar with your surroundings, there's a good chance that if you're racing, you're going to get lost. So I'm like, I don't want to get lost. I don't want to,
yeah.
get lost and find out that I missed out on the good food and the beer afterwards, and because that's the fun part is the after party, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And yeah, the team that plans it, they're is just, I mean, really well disconnected in the city, and we're just so grateful that they love the work we do and support it in this unique way. And as celebrating all things bike on that day too is really fun.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Like I said, I plan on being out there all day. I'll be there the first thing in the morning to kind of help out
It
with
should be a great
the
day.
bike
Yeah.
along, and then hang out, in the afternoon for the belt grind and the party afterwards. So I've got, that Saturday, I'm booked.
Yeah. I love it.
So looking forward to it. So before we close out, I want to encourage everyone to check out the website bearingsbikeworks.org, and read through some of the success stories that they've shared on there, because they're just doing phenomenal work, and they're actually transforming lives. There's these kids' lives, their community, and I think that could expand beyond just Adair Park. And I think it's just fantastic work. But before we go, Becky, is there a success story that sort of kind of like, still it just resonates, says, yes, this is the mission, and this is sort of kind of like the legacy for
Mm,
you and Tim?
yeah. Um, Gosh, I mean, there's so many they're now like young adults, that we're so proud of. A special young man in our life is his name's Collins. He was one of the first kids we met actually in the neighborhood. Met him while he was stealing a bike. Actually, Tim met him. So realized he needed a bike, and he earned a bike in the early days, and we we became friends. We became just close, and he lived in the community for all of his growing up years. He was 12 years old when we met him, and um, he earned a bike. He participated in the program. We would go to football games and support him in what he was doing. He headed to college and just graduated from Kennesaw State about a year and a half ago, and
Awesome.
just had a just I had a lot of challenges. He lost his mom when he was young, um, and has a sibling in prison, and just he knew firsthand, and he shared. Now there's actually a video on our website where he just knew that the negative influences around him, he had a choice and could head one way or the other, and credits the community, just having people around supporting him, affirming him in his path were what kept him on the straight and narrow, if you would. And so those things are just special, just knowing that community, and letting people know you care and you're there and can speak up, when you see there's interesting choices being made or that sort of thing, or point in the right direction, and not in a dictator type of way, but just
Hmm.
being a mentor and a guide, is really special. So we're super proud of Collins and what he's doing today.
Well, that's great to hear. I mean, I sort of kind of became familiar with Bearings, as we were kind of opening up a bike shop and getting more involved. And what does that mean as far as relationships in the community and things that we were doing, and became aware of what the work that you guys do. And of course, prepping for this, interview, I definitely did my research, checked out the website, learned so much more about you. And then, talking to you, I'm a huge fan of you and the work that you and Tim are doing and the whole organization and Bearings. And you've got, whatever I can do, as far as from Big Peach, running company, Ride and Run, and supporting the work that you guys are doing. Please, feel free to reach out at any time. Like I said, I'll be out at the Bike Along, the Bell Grinder, and I'm already looking at the other events and seeing, kind of how that lines up with my schedule, because I would definitely want to support. I think this is great work. I think
Oh,
it's,
thanks.
those things that, as individuals or even as a community, what can we do to change or transform someone's life? And you've shown that that can be done. You're an example, and there's, a lot of times we say, oh, well, you're a gift, and you truly are. The work that you and Tim are doing and Bearings is a gift, not only to your community, but to the city. And I'm just so happy to have connected with you. So thank you so much, and continue doing the work that you're doing. And, we'll support you as much as we can. I know that we're, obviously us having a bike shop, we're going to need mechanics and people to work in our shops. So you guys will definitely be the first, where we'll reach
Yeah.
out and look for that support, to get those future team members and provide those opportunities to those individuals that have, are looking for something new, something different, and a different choice in their life. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for joining.
Oh, thank you so much. We're so grateful for you all, and your whole team is just awesome, and appreciate all you do in the community as well. And just love to remind people, it just started with that one little bike, just one little act of kindness. And sometimes those are the good reminders that it's, you never start out big or what looks big. It just starts with helping a neighbor, helping a friend, and you never know what can become of it. So I appreciate you having me, Dave. Thanks.
Oh, you're welcome, and that's a great message to kind of close this podcast out. So thank you so much, Becky, and we'll keep in touch.
Absolutely.
All right, we'll be right back after this break. And welcome back, man. That was a great conversation. It was a pleasure having Becky, and I truly do mean that I am a huge fan of the work that Tim and Becky are doing, and just Bearings overall, and everyone that has put time into that organization and the work they're doing is phenomenal. And so I'm a huge fan. I really want to encourage all of you to come out to Bearings Bike Along. As Becky said, it is a family friendly type of event. It's like a 6 mile ride or run, your choice. Bring the kids out. There'll be plenty of fun activities, food and beverages, and it's all to support the work that they're doing. So your registration goes directly to Bearings Bike Works to support the work that they're doing in that community. And if you're adventurous like I am, take a look at the belt grind. That's proves to be a sort of kind of a very maybe non-traditional but fun way, very open to cyclists of all abilities. Although preferably, I think based on where I think they'll take the course, a mountain bike or gravel bike will probably more suited to this than a strictly road bike. So I'll be out there all day, volunteering in the morning with the Bearing Spike Along, helping the kids and families in any way that I possibly can, along with our team from Big Peach Ride and Run. And then I'm going to hang out afterwards in the afternoon and participate in the belt grind. So coming out, and I encourage you to come out to that event and support this great organization. If you can't come out to that event, do go onto their website and look at other ways of supporting them. They do have, like I said, that barbecue and brews that's in the fall. I believe it's October 2nd. And if you do have a bike that you're just no longer using, or just collecting dust, or maybe it's broken down and just don't know what to do with it, either take it to them and support them, let them service it, and those funds will help support the work that they're doing, or just donate it all together and let that be a bike that they can then upcycle and provide it to someone else and the work that they're doing. So really, really great work that they're doing. I know that we're going to continue to partner up with them. They will actually provide some of the SAG support and mechanics for VeloCity that we will be a part of, and we will be recruiting staff for our bike shops when we are ready to do so, because we will be growing and we will need more team members. And so why not pull that right from within our own community, from individuals that are trained, that have been vetted and have the skills to work in a shop, to interact with our guests, and to do our best to kind of once again support the community. So come on out, support them, and keep tuning in. We'll see, what we've got next on the next podcast. And remember, may your best miles be those just ahead. So long, everybody.